Welcome in episode 48 of the Logan Ward Show. Be sure to subscribe, especially on YouTube if you haven't already. YouTube is going to be a big thing. And I'm getting the creative juices a little bit. There might be some new things coming up on the YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe there. You can also hit the notification bell to get a notification whenever I post anything. So do that if you have a YouTube channel or a YouTube account. You don't even have to have a channel. You just have to have an account. If you have a YouTube account, you can subscribe. So do that because that's where I'm going to be posting a lot of things. So if you aren't on YouTube, you might want to make a YouTube account and subscribe. YouTube's been pretty cool. All right, there are a couple of things that I want to talk about today. Mostly since we're right around the holiday season, we're right before Christmas. I'm recording this on Monday. Christmas is on Wednesday. So this is going to be a shorter episode, but I felt like I would be remiss if I didn't kind of talk about what happened in college football this weekend. And it's not necessarily about the actual football itself. It's the conversation surrounding college football. And there's a lot of people out there that are upset and really hurt about this, apparently. But I said this last episode, and I'll say it again. I'm tired of playing hypotheticals. We saw some of these teams in the college football playoff get absolutely worked. We saw Indiana get worked by Notre Dame. We saw SMU get worked by Penn State. Clemson held their own a little bit in that game against Texas. If it wasn't for Cade Klubnik and kind of his antics, that probably could have been another blowout of a game. But you saw in this first round of the playoffs some ugly games. And immediately, people are saying, all right, well, this is the flawed system of the college football playoff. You know, Alabama wouldn't have been beat by however many to Penn State. Maybe not. But guess what? We didn't win. You didn't win enough games. You were not in a position to be in that game. And I'm finding it incredibly difficult to have sympathy for a South Carolina, an Ole Miss especially, and an Alabama. I don't have sympathy for you. When you talk about hypotheticals, you look and say, well, we would have had a better chance against Penn State. We would have had a better chance against Notre Dame. We would have held our own against Ohio State. Well, I guess that's what you thought, Alabama, when you lost to Vanderbilt. And I'm sure that's what you thought, Alabama, when you only put up 3 points against a 6-6 Oklahoma team. Yeah, of course, you went into that game. Of course, you would have put up a better game than that. But we're not talking about hypotheticals. In college football, more than any other sport, we try to come up with hypotheticals. And I understand that this is because it is a subjective game. You get into a championship window, you get an opportunity based off of subjectivity. We don't have this conversation in the NFL. In the NFL, we don't have a conversation that, you know what, maybe the winner of the AFC South shouldn't get a playoff spot. We don't. We just understand that the AFC North is a really good division with 3 really good teams, and one of them might get left out. This year, the NFC North is extremely good. You have the Vikings, Lions, and Packers all probably going to make the playoffs. And then you're going to have one team from the NFC South. But guess what? They get that spot too. In the NFL, it's more math. It is, are you statistically eliminated? Yes, no. Then you're good. If you win your division, you're in. And this is where I have trouble with college football. Is that, yes, it is subjective. But if you do not win your games, you cannot be upset about someone's subjectivity getting in the way. You know who didn't have to worry about that? Oregon. You know who didn't have to worry about subjectivity? Arizona State winning the Big 12. They didn't have to worry about it. They put it into their own hands, and they won. Are we sitting here going to be talking about should have Colorado made it? They didn't even get to a Big 12 title game. Ole Miss, Alabama. But do they deserve to be in? We can play this game until our head is spinning. But since college football is a subjective game, you have a committee, everyone's going to say the committee got it wrong. Relax. This is going to work itself out. When we had the old BCS system where it was 1 versus 2, people groaned. Were those really the 2 teams that should be in? Sometimes it was clear, sometimes it wasn't. Then we went to the 4-team playoff. And then people were arguing about that 5th spot. Well, should that 5th team be in? Should the Pac-12 champion be in? Should it be the Big 12 champion be in? Or are we going to kick out the ACC champion? What are we going to do? And now, with a 12-team playoff, or you have more of an opportunity to get things done and be in the postseason. You have an opportunity to win a conference championship game. And the way that it is looking, the way that this is kind of scheduled, this kind of pans out, is even if you get to an SEC championship game, an ACC championship game, you're going to be in. And you know what that means? You just have to win your games. That's it. So Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin can get on Twitter and he can be upset about it. But when it comes down to it, you lost to Kentucky. Sorry. That's unfortunate. And no, don't go saying, well, Kentucky would beat Wake Forest by 35. Doesn't work like that. Nobody in the NFL ever says this. Nobody in the NFL says, man, I really wish that we were in the NFC South. And if we were in the NFC South, we would have been in the playoffs. So we should just be in. No. It's the way it works. And did this year, kind of the first round, the games themselves, were they kind of a drag? Yeah. It wasn't necessarily fun watching SMU throw 2 pick sixes in the first quarter and then basically the game is over at that point. No, it wasn't necessarily fun watching Ohio State just beat the crap out of Tennessee. It wasn't fun, but it happens. But guess what it also does? It also opens an opportunity for all these schools to be a part of it. And even if your typical teams won these games, there's going to be some times that they don't. There's going to be a day that an SMU goes into Penn State and wins. There's going to be a day where a team from the ACC goes to the SEC runner-up. They're going to go there and they're going to win a game. We don't see this happen in college basketball where we have 68 teams get into the tournament. We don't complain about the games being out of hand and that team doesn't deserve to be in it. We don't see it. It's just in college football. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because, there's so much at stake with these games, the amount of money that can be produced from these games, the recruiting aspect of these games. Maybe that's why it seems to matter more in college football versus college basketball. But all of this is for naught if these teams that are complaining, Alabama and South Carolina and Ole Miss, if they just win your games. If you don't lose, then you're in. It seems pretty simple to me. But here we are, a couple days after the first round of the college football playoff, and everyone's talking about not the games, Not the next series, not the next matchup, but we're talking about the off-the-field stuff. The Lane Kiffin, the Kirk Herbstreit talking about first take. This is what we're talking about. And it's honestly frustrating. Because we didn't have great games. But we could now be previewing the next ones. It really kind of irritated me this week with all of that. All right, I do want to talk about next week's games because we do have some good ones. I have a full breakdown. Last week I did a full college football playoff breakdown. So I have a video. You can, I don't know which sign it's going to come up here on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, the little title card will pop up. But go click on that to kind of give you my rundown of these games in full. Now, I have a little bit more to go off of quickly. I haven't really gone off of my plan so far. I mean, I picked all these teams to win. I picked Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, and Notre Dame. This week, I have Oregon beating Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. I have Texas winning against Arizona State, Penn State beating Boise State, and I have Notre Dame beating Georgia. That's the upset. Notre Dame beating Georgia, but I don't necessarily think that it's an upset. I got a lot of pushback comments about Notre Dame. A couple of weeks ago, I had said, look, Notre Dame in the 12-team playoff, you got to get into a conference. It's going to make everything easier. Notre Dame fans came out in droves just trying to bash me, talking about strength of schedule and blah, 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 blah. I don't necessarily care. I still think they need to get in a conference because, as you see with Ohio State, Alabama, South Carolina, I don't know if Notre Dame's going to continue to schedule some of these games because 2 losses and an SEC team might get in over you. If you have 2 losses instead of 1, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to get in over you. And so I think might start cherry picking a little bit more of their schedules than what they have this year. Okay. These schedules are played out in advance. Okay. They didn't necessarily have much control over when the playoff was happening. I'm sure they had these games scheduled for a while. So I still think Notre Dame needs to get into a conference and I wouldn't let them in. However, that does not mean I don't think this Notre Dame team is good. I do. I think this Notre Dame team is good. Their defense showed that they were pretty elite against Indiana. And in this game against Georgia, I'm picking Notre Dame to beat Georgia. I think that this Notre Dame defense is really good, and I think Riley Leonard, who's not a great passer, capable passer, but he is a capable runner. And what have we seen this year? Georgia have a kryptonite. Running quarterbacks. Jalen Milroe ran all over him. Haynes King with Georgia Tech almost beat them in a couple of overtimes, and he was kind of just Superman on his back, cape on his back, go win the game. And they've struggled. They've struggled against mobile running quarterbacks. What does Riley Leonard do? He runs. He has over 14 rushing touchdowns this season. He is an athlete back there, and I think that's going to give Georgia fits. They aren't going to have Carson Beck. Yes, I know that they've had a couple of weeks to prepare their backup quarterback. I don't necessarily think that matters. I think Notre Dame wins that game. Penn State over Boise State. Ashton Jeanty has an incredible season, but that Penn State front seven is legit, and I don't think that he's going to have the running room that he has had. Now, he did really well against Oregon on the road at Autzen Stadium earlier in the season. I just don't think that he has it this game. Texas, Arizona State, the Texas defense is really good. Last week, the Texas offense started clicking a little bit. I still think there's some areas that they can start putting Arch Manning in a little bit more, maybe getting him to throw the ball. I think that is coming. They have put Arch Manning in the game essentially to run the ball. And that's what they did last week. They put him in. He tried to run the ball, fumbled it, smartly just dove on it and didn't try to do anything crazy with it. But I think that they need to start introducing that, because when he comes into the game, now Texas A&M last week against Clemson, when he comes into the games, he's run the football. It's a read option. All right. So I think that they're going to start working in some pass concepts off of those packages that they already have him in. Oregon, Ohio State, obviously a rematch from earlier this season. I think that Oregon is playing better than what they were when they met Ohio State the first time. Ohio State, while they seem to have figured something out last week, get the ball to your playmakers on the outside. You are the best team in college football, and recruiting wide receivers, use them. They kind of got away from that in the Michigan game, but against Tennessee, aggressive in the first half with their play calling, jumped out to a lead, didn't really let off the gas. I still think this Oregon team can match up on the outside with their wide receivers. I think they're athletic enough to match up, and I just think that Oregon is the best team in the country right now. Coming off a weeks of rest, now and you have Ohio State, who just played at home, going to have to travel to California. Yes, you're going to have to travel as well, but the Rose Bowl is kind of a home away from home for the Oregon Ducks. It seems like they play in the Rose Bowl so many times. So they're going to be comfortable, and I think Oregon wins that. So we'll have an Oregon-Texas semifinal, Notre Dame-Penn State final. If that isn't great for brands, I mean, that is 4 of the biggest brands in college football. And so this is going to be a good one. I'm ready for it. All right. I told y'all this wasn't going to be very long. We're going to get something out. We'll talk a little bit as the playoff race is getting closer. We're getting down to it in the NFL. Some teams were already eliminated. Yesterday, the Cardinals, the 49ers, and the Cowboys all eliminated from playoff contention. We kind of have who is going to be in that hunt. Right now, in the NFC, Washington and Green Bay are your wild cards. You have Philadelphia that's already... they can still lose the division. However, don't think that's going to happen. Detroit and Minnesota, they're tied for the lead in the North. You have Atlanta, who has the lead in the NFC South, and then in the NFC West now, you have the Los Angeles Rams at 9-6 leading that division. The AFC East, you got Buffalo, who's already won that division. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, both at 10-5. That's going to come down to the final 2 weeks. This game against Kansas City for Pittsburgh on Christmas is going to be big. And then Houston, who has already clinched the division, they're 9-6. They'll be in the playoffs. Kansas City at 14-1. And then the 2 wildcard teams right now are both from that AFC West with the Chargers and the Broncos. That's right now. All right. So you have the Ravens and Texans, Steelers, and Kansas City Wednesday on Christmas Day on Netflix, which let me just nerd out a little bit on the actual sports media side of this. I think that this is fascinating. Netflix had some issues with that Tyson and Jake Paul fight. They had some issues with the stream. And you're going to have a lot more people trying to watch Christmas Day football than maybe... I know that they said that they broke records for the Tyson and Paul fight. We'll see. You're going to have 2 games going on back-to-back in different locations. I think that this is going to be very interesting for a Netflix perspective. We've already seen Amazon get Thursday Night Football that's streaming exclusively on Prime. We've seen some Peacock exclusive streaming on Wildcard Weekend last year. Black Friday was another big thing. The NFL is starting to become where you're just going to have to piece everything out, and you're going to have to try to find it. Netflix has entered the chat. They're going to try to do their thing. It's going to be interesting. And I'm actually the most interested in the commentary. They announced there's like 10 to 15 people that are going to be on this thing. I don't know who the crews are. I don't know I think that J.J. Watt and Noah Eagle or Ian Eagle is going to be on one of them. This is going to be interesting. So I'm actually fascinated from a technical standpoint and a broadcasting standpoint, how it's going to look on Netflix, the graphics, everything. What is it going to look like on Netflix? I'm really excited about that. But the actual football, Steelers, Kansas City. Kansas City wins this game on Wednesday. They've locked up the 1 seed. They could spend the last 2 weeks of the season, week 17 and 18, resting starters, resting Patrick Mahomes, and having 3 full weeks. I don't think they will, but could have 3 full weeks of resting players before the first round of the playoffs at Arrowhead. This is statistically the best start to a season for a 2-time defending Super Bowl champion. I think it was the 49ers with Joe Montana. They had started kind of about this. They did not win the Super Bowl. There's never been a team that has won 3 in a row. Chiefs are trying to be the first one. And this will help. If they can win on Wednesday and get through this gauntlet of a game where they had 3 games in like 11 days and come away with that 3-0 and be 15-1 and lock up the 1 seed with 2 weeks to play, or I guess at least 1 week to play and rest starters, that is huge for what the Kansas City Chiefs want to do. Have Patrick Mahomes try to kind of nurse that ankle for 2 weeks and then get him ready to go for the divisional round of the playoffs. So we're getting down to it. The playoffs are coming up. This whole month is going to be college football. What a time. What a time it is to be a sports fan. All right. I told y'all that was going to be a little quick one. We still went 20-something minutes. However, it was a little quick. We'll be back next week to talk college football reaction. We'll have some of that. Be sure to follow on Instagram at Logan B. Ward if you haven't already as well. All right. We'll be back next week. Talk to you later. Peace.